Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining Safe Silver Spring. This is our quarterly meeting with Montgomery County Police Department's 3rd District Commander and his senior staff. My name is Alan Bowser. I'm currently the president of Safe Silver Spring. We have some of our board members on the call tonight. I see Karen Matson, and thank you, Karen, for joining us and everything that you do for the community. We're going to listen to Commander McBain and the staff brief us on developments. I know there's a lot of interest in recent events. Please feel free to ask any questions after they make their presentation. If you'd like to be recognized, you can use the raise your hand function. It's found underneath the reactions icon on your screen. And if you want to put questions in the chat, please feel free to do that. We're going to post this on YouTube and on our Facebook page, Safe Silver Spring. So thank you all for joining us. And without further ado, I want to turn it over to our 3rd District Commander, Commander David McBain, for his introduction and the rest of the program. Commander.
Thank you very much, Alan. I appreciate the introduction and for this group always being very active in what's going on in and around Silver Spring. So I'm just going to, so tonight on the call with me, I don't think this group has changed, which is a good thing because we were kind of cutting through some lieutenants there for a while. But tonight we still have Captain Dave Reed, who's with us in the 3rd District still, Lieutenant Greg Schmiel, who oversees my Ida sector, which is White Oak, Briggs Cheney, and kind of North Burtonsville to the Howard County line. Tony Galladora, who is responsible for downtown Silver Spring in the George sector, and Al Diezenkowski, who oversees all of the police operations in the Henry sector, which is primarily Hillendale on down New Hampshire Avenue to Piney Branch, Long Branch area, and borders Prince George's County. So all these guys are with me tonight. I believe they've been here as we finished out last year's Safe Silver Spring, and all of them will be speaking eventually tonight. So I'm going to start with some stats because I think it puts it into perspective of how hard our officers are working each and every day. But in 2023, just the 3rd District alone, we ran 73,000 calls for service. To do the math on that one, that's 117 calls per day. It was the most calls for service anywhere else in Montgomery County. And we did that. I have an operating staff level of 166, but we're down to about 140 right now. Very proud of the amount of work that these guys and gals are doing each and every day. And I think that number probably will surprise some of you, but 73,000 calls is a lot. And if that's not high enough for you, I pulled as of this morning our stats, our calls for service for January and February, and we've already seen a 3.15% increase in the calls for service. So where in 2023, at this time, we had run 7,600 calls. We are now at 7,860 calls for service. So things aren't slowing down, but we continue to provide what I believe to be incredible police services to the people of the 3rd District. Moving on to some of our stats, and Alan, you alluded to it. I don't try to gloss over certain things. I take the good with the bad. I want to just talk about some of our different crime categories that we track, and talk about the good and the bad. Aggravated assaults are up slightly from 24 that we were at last year, and we're up to 30 this year with a 25% increase. I'm happy to say that auto thefts, we have an 18% reduction in auto thefts, and what's probably most interesting about that is the rest of the county has seen an increase in auto thefts, and somehow we've managed to go from 180 last year to 149 this year at 18% reduction. Our burglaries are also down 24%, and that's a combination of commercial and residential. And I think one of the biggest impacts for us is last year at this time, we had 2 homicides, and we have 0 homicides right now, and I'm very happy about that. Have seen a slight increase in our robberies, up 2.9%. And to round it out, we've seen a continued uptick, 27% uptick in our theft from autos. So those are just a few statistics that we're tracking, and some good things there and some bad things, and we continue to work on those things. I just wanted to talk real quick. So we are going to go around the horn and talk about a little bit about each of the different sectors in the district. But I want to talk about downtown Silver Spring real quick. And as we do this, I'll turn it over to Captain Reed and Lieutenant Galador as I lead into this. But when we talk about those calls for service, downtown Silver Spring in our George 1 sector, that was the busiest sector in all of Montgomery County, and it's obviously our busiest sector where we saw the most calls for service. And Captain Reed will talk a little bit more about when we saw these calls of service and the things that that we're doing with Council Member Stewart's office to counteract some of these high numbers. But so the interesting thing with the downtown Silver Spring, we had a lot of resources that I was putting in downtown Silver Spring, and slowly but surely, as I kind of ran out of manpower, I started pulling a little bit of these resources out of downtown to put them up in other sectors to address some other crime. And interestingly enough, and I kind of figured this would happen, but I started to see a little bit of an uptick for certain calls. And so it seems like when I pull some of the resources out of downtown, things start ticking up in a not so good way. And so in order to address that, I will tell you that I reached out to our Assistant Chief, Mark Yamada, who oversees our Field Services Bureau, and he's authorized assets from our Special Operations Division and our Traffic Division, who are going to start working on Monday in downtown Silver Spring. Now, the traffic units are going to do high visibility traffic enforcement. They're going to focus on George Avenue from the DC line all the way to probably about 16th Street. And then they're also going to focus on Colesville Road from the Circle kind of north to Spring Street, even as far up as Dale. So we're going to have the luxury of having a lot more police officers from the Traffic Division down here doing traffic enforcement. And the good thing with that is that while doing that traffic enforcement, if something does happen, like a robbery or some type of violent crime, we have more resources in the area to hopefully make a capture. In addition, I've selected 4 static positions where I believe it's most beneficial to have police officers and special operations officers, specifically SWAT officers, will be positioned at the Silver Spring Metro Station at Wayne and Colesville. We're going to have one at Colesville and George Avenue. We're going to have one officer at Ellsworth and Fenton, and then we're going to have one officer down on George Avenue at Sligo. Those are areas where I've seen an increase in calls for service in certain crimes, and I think that the high visibility that they offer, along with their expertise in their field, if we do have violent crimes, those are the guys that I'd like down there. So, I just want to make sure people understood that, I'm always looking for ways to, use my resources. And this was a big assist from our Field Services Bureau. And so we're going to move forward. That's going to stay into effect for the near future until we can kind of reevaluate, how things are going and what other changes need to be made. And then in addition to the work that we're doing in downtown Silver Spring, we saw a big increase in calls for service and quality of life issues and violent crime up in our Lockwood area, White Oak area, specifically along Lockwood Drive. And so we've got a lot of resources that have been put in that location, and I'm going to allow Lieutenant Schmiel to talk about that in a minute. So we as I told this group in the past, I have a limited number of officers to work with, and it's my job to try to deploy those officers in the appropriate place. I'm kind of looking at some of the comments going out, but I am using a special assignment team. I don't typically talk about what I do with my plainclothes assets, but know that they rove the entire district. They do spend quite a bit of time in downtown Silver Spring, and already this year they've made some significant arrests, not only in Montgomery County, but also in neighboring Prince George's County, of individuals that have committed some violent crimes here. So I have those resources. I use them where I think I need them. And you'll hear more about how we're using some of our resources like SAT and DCAT in just a little bit. Let me just make sure so when I turn this over to Lieutenant Galladora, he's going to talk about the drone as a first responder. I think that's important that people understand how we're using the drone and make sure that we clear up any misunderstandings of what that's doing. I know that Dave Reed's going to talk about our efforts working with Kate Stewart's office for the nighttime enforcement and nighttime operations of our nighttime businesses. And I want to just point out that for those of you who are paying attention to what's going on in Annapolis, we're very much in support of House Bill 105 and Senate Bill 421, which is Noah's Law. For those who don't know, that's a law that's going to clear up a loophole for basically drunk driving offenders that receive a probation before judgment. So we're for that bill. So if you're interested in taking a look and sending a letter to your representatives in Maryland, in Annapolis, that would be great. And we're also very hopeful for House Bill 319 and Senate Bill 52, which is the Juvenile Justice Restoration Act and Reform. And I think basically those are things that Annapolis is talking about in reference to maybe rolling back some of the moves they made with juvenile justice over the last couple of years that have really affected law enforcement and crime in general. So just a couple tidbits for Annapolis that I wanted to point out. So with that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn it over to Captain Dave Reed to talk about our nighttime efforts in downtown Silver Spring.
Thank you, Commander. And just a couple of things, when Commander McBain talks about our calls for service and stuff, I want everybody to understand that it's just not an in and out. We have seen an uptick. I just talked to some of the supervisors today of people with serious mental health that the officers are dealing with. I've spoke to officers that have worked in downtown Silver Spring for going over 10 years. And they usually know the frequent persons that have episodes where they have to take them to the hospital, but they say they're seeing more now that they've ever seen, and these are people that they've never heard from before. So they're dealing a lot. Myself and the rest of the executive staff, seems like all we do some days is watch body cameras for use of force. And just like today, I spent 3 hours watching 3 calls because 4 officers spent an hour with a gentleman having a manic episode that they had to hold him still, wait for fire and rescue to take him to the hospital. So that took 4 officers in downtown Silver Spring off the streets for an hour. To Commander McBain's credit, We work with our CIT, which is our crisis intervention team out of headquarters. We've created the district crisis intervention team with Nikki Hawkins, and she has been doing a great job. But these calls for service are extremely draining on our staff. But we continue to do the very best we can to get them back into service and stuff like that. Now, for the nighttime legislation bill, this is something that we've been working on for 3 years. I know as a lieutenant working under Commandant McBain, and it is great to be on the team with Cecily and Councilmember Stewart. We're really hoping that we can get this across the finish line. And, you know, we have one of the things that we found out with we have an amazing crime analyst, is downtown Silver Spring, which is the George 1 beat, which is basically all of downtown Silver Spring. We found from 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. that the George 1 beat is almost double, and sometimes more than double, the calls for service than any other place in the county. These officers are hustling. And sometimes, since the hookah bars can be open until 7 a.m. because there are no restrictions, a lot of our officers that work in the George sector with our midnight officers have to be stationed on Bonifant Street, where usually some of the problems start to occur from anywhere from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. until day work gets out. So that's officers that we're taking away from the neighborhoods to be in the hotspot areas of downtown Silver Spring to make sure crime does not occur, fights does not occur, gun violence does not occur, and things like that. So we are really hoping, and we applaud their efforts, that we can get the closing at 2 a.m. on the weekends for all businesses, and 2 a.m. on the weekdays for all businesses, and 3 a.m. on the weekends. And this will also run parallel with a nighttime safety plan, where businesses have to abide by proper lighting, security, cameras. They have to clear their windows for safety reasons, for not only for police, but fire and rescue coming into the areas. So this is a long time coming, and I'm hoping that we can get this passed. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lieutenant Galador.
Thank you very much, Captain Reed. And again, I appreciate everybody being on. I'm Tony Galador, and my primary area is focusing on downtown Silver Spring. And I'm just going to give a quick update on our Drone as First Responder program. I know we've talked about it in the past. This was approved by the council around October. We went operational with it, and we're really kind of getting into our stride and seeing a lot of payoffs right now. So it's kind of two technologies on top of each other. One piece is called Live 911, and the way that works is if somebody calls 911 within the range of where the drone can respond to, the officers in that room can hear that 911 call in real time. So we're able to actually shave about a minute or two off of our response times, and in some cases get on the radio and send officers before the calls are even dispatched, which is incredible, for a crime in progress. So we're shaving time off our response. And then the second piece is we're able to launch our Drone as First Responder program, and it is a pilot program right now. And it's based at Georgia and Colesville, and also in the Wheaton downtown area near Reedy Drive. But we can send the drone, and in most cases, it's getting in the area of a call within about 90 seconds, which is incredible for a response time. So from when it takes off to when it gets in the area, in most cases, it's getting on scene within about 90 seconds. So we're not sending it for anything that kind of occurred earlier crimes. We're sending them for in progress crimes. It's only in response to 911 calls for service, or if an officer sees a crime that occurs, we can send it to assist that officer. But big thing we wanted to make sure everyone understands is it is not just proactively flying around looking for things. It is only being deployed in response to 911 calls for service and to assist an officer that observes a crime. So just the last week, how are we actually using it? What are we seeing? We did release one video to the public, and it was out in the media a few weeks ago. We have a few more on deck that we're getting ready to publish in news releases. But just last week, we had a citizen call in, say they saw a person breaking out windows in cars. As I'm sure you've seen on TV, and we've talked about at these meetings, are theft from autos and stolen vehicles have been up over the last year. In this case, we were able to launch the drone, found a person that matched the description, and within 2 minutes or 2 or 3 minutes of watching them, saw them try door handles on some cars. And then just a few minutes later, they went to a car that was kind of parked on a side street, broke out the window, climbed into the car, stole property. Again, this all happened with the drone directly overhead. We watched it. We relayed it to the officers on the ground. And as that person walked away, they got about a block and a half before officers took them into custody. In another case, it was a retail theft. 5 individuals went into the store, masked up, and started collecting property. They called 911, and we had the drone over top the store, looking down at the sidewalk in front of it before they even exited the store. When they did, we were able to call the store. We confirmed that a crime occurred and that those were the people that committed the crime. We were able to follow them with the drone, and as officers tried to stop them, they all ran. And the drone was able to follow 2 of them for several blocks until they got tired and started walking, and they thought they got away. And officers were waiting for them at the next intersection and took them into custody. So huge win for de-escalation. We didn't have to chase them down ourselves or put anybody at risk. We waited for them to get tired, and we had officers waiting for them to take them into custody. So we're going to be pushing out some of those videos, hopefully in the next few days. And then we expect some further discussion with the public, should the program continue on beyond June. And that's all I have for that.
Thank you, Tony. Some big takeaways there for the group. And I was trying to answer some of the chats. So if Tony mentioned this, I apologize for repeating, but some of the big things what we find is it seems like the public, either they really, really love it or they're really scared of it, of what we're doing. And those are some of the comments we've seen in Nextdoor posts. But I want people to understand that the drone is not out and about doing surveillance in your neighborhoods. In fact, it only operates in downtown Silver Spring, but it doesn't go out on its own just to do surveillance on specific people. It is a first responding tool. And so I just want to be clear about that so people don't think that it's like Big Brother, that we're watching your every move. All right. Hey, just one more thing we'll talk about for downtown. I will say that a couple things that we've done, and I don't know if we talked about it at the end of December 23, but at the end of last year, I created a district a district crisis intervention team officer. That is Nikki Hawkins. Some of you might know her, but that's in addition to the 6 crisis intervention team officers that work out of headquarters. 3rd District has, I created our own specific to our district, and she's been instrumental in kind of really being the liaison between Progress Place, HHS, and other organizations that handle our mental health crisis and our homeless issues in downtown Silver Spring. We still spend a lot of time handling mentally observant calls, individuals that are not doing well. We're working with the HHS, but we still find that we're trying to get out of that. We're still trying to get out of that business of dealing with a large number of these mental health issues, understanding that we will never fully get out of it, and we're always going to be there to support HHS, but we're still working with the county executive's office and Kate Stewart and other council members at looking at ways of better handling our mental health and homeless issues. I know that I think Jacob Newman's on the call, but he's been instrumental in working with us to come up with solutions as well. And we continue that conversation to kind of get police out of a lot of this and have us devoted on more serious crimes, and knowing that we'll always be a part of it. So with that, we'll take questions at the end of the presentations and stuff, but I want to switch gears and turn it over to Lieutenant Schmiel, and he can talk about the things that we're doing up in White Oak.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Commander McBain. Like the commander said, I'm Greg Schmiel. I'm one of the lieutenants in the 3rd District, and I oversee primarily the IDA sector. And we have recently, by looking through the statistics, calls for service, complaints, identified the White Oak Shopping Center and the area of Lockwood Drive as a very high priority for us, pretty much the top priority in the IDA sector right now. Recently, we've seen a rise in crime, all different types of crime, but a lot of retail theft. We're dealing with a lot of quality of life issues, people loitering, drinking in public urination, gambling in the area, things like that. We also have a lot of homelessness in that area, people that are living in the wood lines or living in the bus stops, just kind of loitering all day, causing issues for the people that are coming into the area to shop and work. And we're also noticing a lot of people that are suffering from mental health issues in that area. So for that reason, we've really made this a high priority, and we're throwing a great deal of resources into the area. First and foremost, we are continuing our community engagement. For anybody that's not familiar with the program and what we've been doing, we require every officer in the 3rd District to spend at least a half hour per week out in a shopping center within their sector, whether it be Ida George or Henry, doing 30 minutes of community engagement, just out there, out of their cars, walking around, saying hello to people, meeting the business owners, meeting the shoppers, helping people load their cars, things of that nature, and providing a presence. That's something that we're requiring of every officer. And since we've started this program and started tracking the statistics, we're up to, as of today, 1,470 entries. So we're approaching 1,500 entries. And if you think about the fact that each of those is at least one officer doing 30 minutes of community engagement, we've been spending quite a lot of time in the shopping centers. And White Oak Shopping Center has been the primary focus within the IDA sector. Additionally, we recently moved a mobile camera trailer to the area so that we can see the area of Lockwood Drive from the gas station, the Popeyes, the 7-Eleven, all the way down to the Mercedes repair shop, and then portions of the shopping center as well. That gives our officers the real-time ability to get into those cameras and monitor that area via the cameras, or potentially track suspects that are fleeing from a crime. And our VCIC, the Violent Crime Information Center, they also have people that monitor those cameras. So they're able to monitor those cameras and then relay what they're seeing to the officers on the ground to assist them in their responses. In addition to that, we're in the process of bringing signboards into the area just to let everybody know that we're there. We are requesting increased patrols. We're really trying to throw as much of a patrol presence in there as possible. As everybody mentioned earlier, we are very short-staffed, but we're asking that anytime somebody has to take a break and grab a cup of coffee, write a report, anything like that, they do it in that area with their blue lights on so that there is that police presence and people are there to respond immediately if there are issues. We are asking them to deal with the quality of life issues, the people that are loitering, the people that are gambling, drinking, defecating, things of that nature, whether they do that via arrest or citation or simply just being in the area and making these people uncomfortable so that they don't want to be there. We're trying to push them out of that area to make it habitable for the people that come and shop and work there. We also have our DCAT team, the District Community Action Team, which is a uniformed team that drives marked police cars, but they are specifically responsible for proactive policing. And these guys, let me tell you, our team in 3D is absolutely phenomenal. They can somehow they can smell guns. I mean, these guys are pulling guns out of cars on a regular basis. In fact, when we first asked them to spend the majority of their time last week in this area of Lockwood, they pulled a gun out of a car on a traffic stop on their very first day. So these guys are out there trying to look for the people that are coming into the neighborhoods with the drugs, with the firearms, uncover those on traffic stops and make the arrest as appropriate. We're also working closely with property management in that shopping center as well as the businesses along Lockwood Drive. And we've brought in tree cutting teams that are cutting all the tree line on the back of the shopping center. We've noticed that we have a lot of issues there with people hanging out all day. We have encampments. It's one of the areas where people like to sit and use drugs or drink, things like that. So we partnered with the property management, and we're clearing out that wood line to hopefully prevent people from feeling comfortable using those trees as cover to do whatever nefarious acts they're up to. Additionally, like I mentioned earlier, we are noticing a lot of people in that area, especially the homeless, are dealing with a lot of mental health issues. So we've also asked our crisis intervention team, our CIT officers, who are specially trained to deal with people with mental health issues, to come in and offer them services so that we're not just pushing them somewhere else and making them someone else's problem. If they have legit issues that they'd like to get help with, we're trying to get them the services that the county offers. Additionally, we're trying to continue with the community engagement. We've been working closely with Parks and Rec, and we will be coordinating again a 3-on-3 basketball tournament coming up this April and May. It'll run 4 consecutive Fridays at the end of April into May. And we're basically looking for middle school up to high school age kids from the White Oak area and the Briggs Cheney area. We get them together with some police officers. Target is actually helping to sponsor it. They're going to bring some people in as volunteers, and we're just going to play some basketball, have some fun, meet these kids, and just kind of have positive interactions with them. So we're trying to get into the neighborhoods as well and then interact with these kids, provide them with a meal, and just have some positive interactions. So in summary, we're trying to come at White Oak from all areas. We're coming at it with the high visibility. We're doing enforcement action when it's appropriate. We're dealing with the mental health issues. We're dealing with the engineering as far as the tree lines and the shopping center itself. And we're also continuing to focus on the community engagement. Our ultimate goal is to make the citizens feel safe when they come into that area for legitimate purposes, and make the criminals who are there for illegitimate purposes very uncomfortable and get them out of there. And I'll turn it back over to Commander McBain to add anything else that I may have left out.
No, it's real good. Thank you very much, Greg. I'm just going to end our presentation real quick to talk about a couple of things that actually Greg reminded me of. One thing I want to talk about in 2023, your officers in the 3rd District seized 30 PMFs, or ghost guns, privately manufactured firearms. That's the most PMFs anywhere else in the county. Overall, for 2023, they seized over 288 firearms. I will tell you that a majority of those firearms came from traffic stops. And already this year, we're on a pace of seizing even more guns. And so that's some incredible work that our guys and gals are doing out there. The amount of guns that we're taking off the road is it's a good and bad thing, right? It's great that we're getting them, because I believe, and I've said this often, that when those guns are taken in a traffic stop, they're not reaching their destination here in the county and not being used. And I'm just very, very impressed with the work that they're doing. And then again, and then finally, I know that Tony talked about the drone, but also I wanted to say that we're operating license plate readers on the district line, and a license plate reader, for those who don't know, we have fixed poles, and then we have license plate readers on some of our cruisers. but they allow us to run tags, registrations that are coming into Silver Spring. And oftentimes they provide us with hits, or they locate stolen vehicles, and they once a stolen vehicle enters downtown Silver Spring, our officers are alerted to it. And the good and bad thing there is that we're alerted to it, but the bad part about it is it normally results in a pursuit, something that unfortunately your 3rd district officers lead the county in as well. Not really. It's a tough one because pursuits are very dangerous, but we're getting more of these cars stopped than you would think. And not only are we getting these cars and recovering them, but oftentimes the occupants are also armed with firearms and drugs and other contraband that we don't want in our county. So big technology piece that's helping us out. Silver Spring, we have the luxury of, we have the most portable camera systems operating in our district. And every time I can get my hands on another one, I'll try to do that. And then finally, if you guys are paying attention to Nextdoor, I've employed my basically my community service officer, Glenda Franco, to really just give a Friday roundup, kind of a weekend review of some top things that our district's doing every single week. I believe we're probably 5 or 6 weeks into it. It seems that it's like 95% or maybe 99% good comments and a few not so good comments, but we're going to continue with our efforts to update people of what's going on in Silver Spring, so that we can kind of keep you in the know between these meetings. And so with that, Alan, I'll turn it over and we can answer some questions the best we can.
Thank you, Commander. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you'd like to raise a question, use the raise your hand function. It's under the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen. Try to take as many questions as we can. But before we go to you, David Cohen, I want to ask the commander this question. 2 of the most events that have got the community's attention were the incident 2nd Avenue, where he arrested 4 people who came from Virginia to do a gun deal. And the other one was took place this past Saturday morning at 3 a.m. on Georgia Avenue, where it sounds like there were 2 groups who were armed, who were shooting at each other. And I'm wondering if you can comment on both of those events and tell us if and how they've been resolved.
Well, so the first event you're talking about, the individuals that came from Virginia to sell firearms. This is crazy, and I'm just so thankful that my officers weren't involved in a shooting. But my special assignment team that we were talking about earlier, they actually witnessed that incident occur, and that shootout occur. They arrested everyone involved, which was great. We seized, I think, 3 firearms, to include an AK-47, and like I said, everybody involved. They arrested, I think, all of them except for one that night, and they picked the one individual up the next day or the next few days. It's interesting, but I know that laws are a little different over in Virginia, and it's just interesting that there's been people talking about the fact that they actually came to Silver Spring to do the gun transaction. But I'm happy to report that we made that arrest immediately as it happened. As far as the 3 a.m. Incident, I'm hoping that I know of it. I just don't know all the specifics, but I'm hoping that Captain Reed can just update that one.
So yeah, obviously it's under investigation, but apparently, and this is where we're working very hard with the nighttime legislation bill. it happened close to Society Lounge, so everybody automatically assumed Society was involved. Society was not involved. It just happened to be after 3 a.m. after if all the business were starting to close. It appears that a robbery had occurred with guns. And from what we're understanding is a group of individuals that were friends of this potential victims also had guns. And so one thing led to another, and one group chased each other, and shots were fired and buildings were hit. This is one of the things that we have been stressing with our council members, why we have to have a reset, why we have to have closing down of downtown Silver Spring, because oftentimes it's not the businesses that are our problems. It is the people that are coming in because of the late night activity and looking for potential victims. And sometimes when we feel like we're the only game in town and our officers are completely overwhelmed, I have pictures upon pictures of sometimes go-go's will pop up or something like that, and we'll see over 200 people in the streets, and 4 officers are trying to manage the chaos until the reinforcements can get there. And then we're getting nasty grounds from citizens. Why aren't you out there making arrests? So you're telling me you want me to send one officer into a group of 200 and try to make an arrest and see where that goes? It's not a feasible option. And so while this is pending and under investigation, but what I have done is Commander McBain and I have moved one of our mobile security cameras that was on Fenton and Ellsworth. We've moved it over to the Sherman-Williams paint store right across the street. That will be moved tomorrow morning so that can be monitored by our real-time crime center. We met today we're getting grant funding for City Watch cameras, so that way we can start putting them up on DOT poles. So we are really hoping, again, this is another work in progress, that we can get these City Watch cameras like you see in Baltimore or DC, that they can be linked to our real-time crime center, and with our DFR program, they can really help us out. Everybody understands we're short on our officers, but we really got our foot on the gas pedal as far as the technology aspect of it. It's not Big Brother. It's not, we're just trying to monitor everybody. It's not the CSI facial recognition software, but everybody screams that we're using. It's not about that. It's about having eyes where crime is occurring, and that we can dispatch our officers there safely and effectively in order to get the bad guys. Like the whole shootout in Virginia, we're trying to send a clear message that if you come to Silver Spring and commit your crimes, you will be arrested, period. And we're going to get him in the system, and that's where our officers are really doing a good job. But more to come on the shootout because it's still under investigation.
Before I turn it over to some of our guests, Captain Reed, I wanted to ask if any progress has been made on the investigation about the homicide about Charles Reynolds, because it's more than a year, and I wonder if you can say anything about that.
Now, we talked to the homicide section quite a bit, and that is still being looked at. They still have leads, but as of right now, it's still just an active investigation.
Thank you, sir. The first question will go to David Cohen.
Hi.
But that's not David.
I'm Lisa Ryan. Thank you very much for doing this. So 2 things. So when you say, the armed mugging on Pershing and Drive and Woodside Parkway is under investigation, what does that mean? Does that mean you have a suspect? Okay, that's number 1. My second question is, could you advise people like me who are very interested in learning, if when we are walking our dogs in our neighborhood at night or during the day, if we should be carrying money with us or our wallets to give to a potential mugger? Sounds weird, but I don't know the answer, and I'm looking for some strategy
Mm,
to protect myself, because that armed mugging happened almost in front of our house. I
Yeah.
mean, my husband saw it from 10 feet away, so.
Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. So my recommendation to you is I would try to make it a point to find somebody else in the neighborhood that you can walk your dog with. I'm not, it's just when you're in bigger groups, even
Yeah.
if it's a couple women as opposed to one lone person or whatever, I think you make yourself less vulnerable to or maybe even really less likely to be encountered. So my recommendation, the easy thing is just find some like-minded person who likes to go for walks and at the time you do, and do that with them.
Okay.
And then as far as your first question, and there's other things, like carrying pepper spray. There's different things that you can carry that gives you that split second just to get out of there,
Yeah.
and so you can carry things like pepper spray to defend yourself from a surprise encounter. Um, and I will also say that we talked about Glenn DeFranco community engagement, but if your community wants to ever have a crime, she does a really good outreach on protecting your neighborhood, protecting your house, protecting yourself and your neighborhood. And she would make it a point to get to your neighborhood and speak with any group. To answer your first question, though, oh
About
man,
pushing in the armed robbery.
yeah. So when we say we have suspects, so when that occurred, I'll tell you, this is what I can share with you. And when that occurred, 4 individuals accosted a male down there and stole his property. They got into a vehicle that we believe was stolen, and it got out of the area very quickly and onto the Beltway headed to PG County. Yes, Montgomery County has its own homegrown criminals, but we do receive a lot of cross-jurisdictional crime that we deal with. So what happens there is our detectives that are assigned the case, they start tracking down tag numbers. They'll go back that car. They'll find out when it was stolen, and it just becomes a kind of just a little lengthier investigation.
Right.
But oftentimes when these guys, and they're usually, unfortunately, and nowadays they're usually very young kids, but when they're doing these crimes, they're using stolen vehicles and then they're ditching those stolen vehicles. So it's highly unlikely that once they've done a crime, they stay in the car, although it happens. So when we're saying it's under investigation, it's not because we're trying to kind of blow it off as, it is what it is. But it's interesting, like for our shootings, we have contact and no contact shootings. But something that we do at every single shooting scene is we collect ballistics, right? We collect the shells that are fired. Now, you think, oh, well, you're just collecting the shells, but what you have to understand is they go into a system called NIBINs, which is a nationwide database, and basically those shell casings have a fingerprint, from where the firing pin hits that bullet, and so we might have a shooting that occurred sometime last year, but they will make an arrest of somebody that has that gun. And so then what happens is not only are they arrested and charged with the gun that night, but also everything that gun was associated with will kind of lead to closures of investigations. So some of them take quite a bit of time.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And just for everybody, some of the community meetings I go to, we actually talk about this, the safety when you're outside.
Yeah.
What some of the things that I always suggest is those that really like to walk, especially at the end of the day, I always tell them, I said, start a walking group. You use your social media to learn more about your people and say, hey, we're going to be walking tonight at 5 o'clock from 5:30. We'll start this location. Anytime you walk as a group, like one of the posts here, is muggings, you know, is it sporadic? Is it crimes of opportunity? It's definitely crimes of opportunity. So if
Mhm.
you're in a big group, then they're less going to mess with you, especially if you're walking a dog. That's why I love big dogs. If I'm walking with a German Shepherd, they're probably not going to mug me. And another thing is always try to walk during the day. When you walk during the day, you have better line of sight of what's around you, depending on the street lighting or anything like that. Crime, you know, a mugger can't hide behind a tree and you can't see them because they're wearing dark clothing. So always try to walk during the day as well. And another thing that we also see, you could drive around downtown Silver Spring and people are walking. What are they doing? Their heads are down in their phone, so they're not aware of their situations. So put your phone down and keep an eye out of where you are. Those three things alone can help you drastically when you're out just for a walk.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Karen. Karen, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify a couple of things. With the mugging that happened in the 400 block of Pershing, it was in the middle of the afternoon. And I'm sorry, but all of the neighborhood groups and everything else, neighborhood watch, knowing when your neighbors are here or when they're away or whatever, we work as a community. But that kind of a crime is very disturbing to me, because part of the reason that we all live in this area is because we like to be able to walk places. And I would like to know, because I haven't understood this yet, is whether or not you believe that the persons that perpetrated this mugging in the middle of the afternoon during the week, not at night, not in the early morning, if this was a random act. I take it from what you're saying that the people did not know each other, that this was just somebody that rolled up on our street and did this. And with that segue, I would like to also understand, when you are monitoring with the cameras in these different locations, what I don't understand is somebody at the police station actually looking at the live feed as it's coming in? So those are my questions. Thank you.
Commander, you want to take it or you may take it?
You go ahead.
So for the second part, for the cameras, yes, in our real-time crime center, we actually have retired police officers that know the lingo, that know what we're looking for, that are monitoring these cameras, that can feed information to us. Sometimes they have actually initiated calls for service for our officers because they noticed something before a call for service even came in that got officers started. Now, for the mugging itself, or for the robbery it occurred, that area, it's very rare we looked at some of the data. It does happen, and I can't promise you it will never happen again. But we did get a call for service just before that happened, where a citizen called 911 and said he saw a car with a busted out window getting off the Beltway, getting on southbound Georgia Avenue. So as officers were heading to that area, that's when the robbery occurred and officers were diverted. So what we believe happened is it's such close proximity. Now, I'm not saying this is what they were thinking, but as officers are flooding the area, they may have dived off into the neighborhood to commit a crime, to jump right back on 495, and the lookout for that vehicle. What we had were they were getting back on 495 and heading back towards Prince George's County. So my personal belief, it was simply a crime of opportunity. They got off to the closest neighborhood they found, and they saw, unfortunately, a unwilling victim. They did their crime and they jumped back on the Beltway. And we can't promise you that will never happen again, but in my heart, and I'm telling you the honest truth here, I believe that was just bad luck into that neighborhood. But we have seen crime, and that is rare in that neighborhood.
Thank you.
And Karen, I'll also just to kind of piggyback that a little bit. We have a lot of young people out here doing some violent crime. We've seen a massive uptick in 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds involved in shootings and robberies and stolen vehicles and carjackings, something we've never seen in many years. And I'll tell you, they are random. These kids are out and about. They have no goodwill intentions at all, and they are roaming in Montgomery, PG County, and the District of Columbia day in and day out, and they're just looking for an opportunity to do that. And I'll tell you that when we make these arrests of these young people, they could care less. You would be amazed at some of the attitudes that we're getting from some of these kids. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate, but the days of like career robbers where we would focus in on a specific group, it's almost not happening anymore. It's so much just these individuals that are just picking up, joining together, stealing a car, and going out and creating havoc. And it's a tough thing to police.
Well, we have you on screen, Commander McBain. Can you or Captain Reed talk about some of the incidents that have happened in the Sligo Avenue area of East Silver Spring? It's a convenience store that was robbed near Ritchie. Maybe that wasn't the real cross street. There was the lounge incident where armed robbers came into the lounge late at night with automatic weapons. What category do you put those events in?
I'll let Dave answer the lounge robbery.
Well, we talked to the detectives actually just the other day, and they're following some leads on that. But again, we think these are crimes of opportunity where people are just driving around. And I think Commander McBain nailed it. We could used to go off where everybody, they had motives in order to do things. But what we're finding right now with our young people is they simply don't care. I mean, we got 12 and 13-year-olds carjacking a car. They'll drive it around until they wreck it, and then they'll carjack another car because it's fun. And then when we arrest them, when the officers arrest them, we're juveniles, because they know the deal. They know the Maryland law. They know, and the officers cannot question them. They have to call their parents. And it is very frustrating to the officers. But that is an active investigation that the detectives are. I mean, we've got some amazing detectives in 3D, and Commander McBain, the rest of the executive staff are constantly talking to them, and they're constantly working long hours in order to solve these crimes. So that's still an open investigation, but I do believe they got some of the videos, and they're following up, and so hopefully by next time we'll be able to say we got an arrest out of it.
And Alan, I'll tell you also, at some point there was some who were believing that there was some type of Ethiopian connection there. I don't think that we've ever confirmed that had any motive in the robbery, that it was an Ethiopian restaurant. But what that incident did do is it stirred up the Ethiopian business owners in downtown Silver Spring, and Captain Reed and I are meeting with them Friday, and we're trying to strengthen our relationship with the Ethiopian community and kind of put their fears at rest.
Well, we have you. Can you comment on the prevalence of retail theft? A lot of people in the community are talking about how they go into CVS and other stores, and a lot of their product is behind glass. So retail theft is a concern. And then do you have any information on sort of the progress of putting CCTVs in the garages?
Yeah, so let me answer your second one. The garage camera system, CCTV, that is the county executive, if I'm not mistaken, and Cecily might be able to chime in on this. I believe the county executive has budgeted for that. And
yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a special appropriation that just came up with council last week. It went to the Public Safety and Government Operations Committee, where it was approved, and that's going to be moving on to the full council But that is a pilot program that starts cameras in garages in Silver Spring, Bethesda, and Wheaton.
Thank you, Cecily. Alan, what was your other part?
About the retail theft.
Oh, so, listen, that's become a regional, that's a nationwide issue where, we're seeing these little mini mob thefts where they storm a Walgreens or a CVS or the Nike store, and they create such a chaos, and they just grab things off the shelves, and they all run out as quickly as possible. And it's interesting, Lieutenant Galador and I was just talking about this. It's almost like they realize at least one of them is going to get grabbed, and that's just collateral damage. They're okay with that because not much is really going to happen to them in the courts for, a misdemeanor theft like that. But I'll tell you, and I know that Lieutenant Galador was talking about it. A lot of times when we're running a lot of calls for service and we have like H&M, I think it's called H&M. But anyway, we had a theft in progress. Well, the drone responded and stayed with the bad guys until our officers were able to free up. And then the drone operator basically walked the officers, to the location of the thieves. So that's something where I think technology helps us out a lot. It does. I think this amount of theft that we're dealing with, we have some businesses that are just no longer really even going after charges. And there's a lot of frustration on everybody's part, and it drives up costs. It just messes things up for everybody. But this is something that's going on throughout all of Montgomery County, all the region, and really in the country.
But I will say that we're not having a hands-off approach like some states are. Just like tonight, I was driving home and they had 3 shoplifting, 2 at HHS or 2 at HMS, and then 1 at the Nike store. Our CBD team, our bike teams, and our DCAT teams are down there almost all the time, and they are making arrests. We have a little bit of a uptick in homelessness. That kind of drives it when they go in to do the shoplifting at the Safeway and stuff like that. But we're trying to stay on top of it. And then when we do make the arrest, we try working with the business owners. We trespass them so that way they can't come back to reoffend. But we're trying to stay on top of as much as we can. But Commander McBain's absolutely right. It's a nationwide issue right now.
Thank you, sir. Joyce, you have a question? I see you.
It was already answered. Thank you all so much. And thank you for your time. It's really been helpful.
Thank you, ma'am.
If anybody else has got questions, please raise your hand, put it in the chat. I've got another question in the interim, and that's, what's the strategy for dealing with these groups of drivers who come down to Montgomery County and they do the donuts and the fireworks and the videos? It's happened a couple of times in downtown Georgia and Colesville, but it also happened in Long Branch, and I was a little surprised by that. I was wondering if you got a strategy for dealing with that.
Yeah, so the Long Branch, that kind of coincided with a pretty big fireworks display that was on Christmas Eve. I think it was either New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve. But in general, I'm going 2 things I'll talk about. So as far as the car meetups or intersection takeovers or whatever you want to call it, Annapolis is working on a bill this year to combat those offenses, right? And they're increasing fines, and they're doing a lot of things to make it better for law enforcement to enforce and to and making really bigger penalties for participating, not only as a driver, but even as a participant that's standing around. So more to come on that. I believe there's a lot of support in Annapolis. They're working with the area city chiefs and the area city sheriff's departments. I will say, like on the Eastern Shore, they're doing some pretty neat stuff out there with seizing cars. And I think hopefully you'll see something that will be adopted by the entire state. So hopefully we'll see more work on that. But I'll tell you that we work with a regional group of officers. It's basically the Maryland State Police with the Council of Governments, with our partners in Prince George's County and all their various city police departments, Transportation Authority, Maryland State Police, Montgomery County Police, Howard County Police, Prince George's County Police. But we basically trade off information and we monitor where these car rallies are going or these takeovers. We do know that they send out scout cars to see what is a good location for them to do whatever it is they do. And Montgomery County has probably had some pretty, what you guys don't know is we've knocked down more than you think. And every now and then they, one or two will get through and they're usually unannounced. But if you knew how many times we're made aware of potential takeovers where we've deployed a large number of officers and where we brought officers from up in the northern part of Montgomery County down, we basically made parts of Silver Spring so unhospitable to these events that they usually bypass us and head into Prince George's County and Howard County. So we do have, we have operations or ways in which we're dealing with these things. I will say that my main focus is I want to prevent property damage and personal injury. And as everybody usually knows, and you probably heard me say, we can't ram these cars, we can't put up roadblocks, and we cannot pursue these cars because they're misdemeanor violations. And so, we're kind of handcuffed in some of the things we want to do. But I got to tell you that when you have these cars operating the way they are, the only thing that can make it worse is probably a pursuit. And so we're not really interested in doing that anyhow. So we use our camera technology and we use our dashboard cameras from our cruisers to obtain tag numbers, and we follow up with the registered owner of the motor vehicle.
Thank you very much. Next question from, do you want to go, Cecily? You want to go?
Can I jump in on that too for just 1 second? Just both the council and the county executive are supportive of the Annapolis bills that were just mentioned. And it's important to understand that those are, the way they're handling that is not something that we can do at the local level. We looked into various things that we could do. And so we need the state to act to really help with some of the, sorry if my dog starts barking, it's really windy out. But some of the things that they're doing to try to help stop that. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we've had some really good conversations about putting in kind of like environmental things to make Silver Spring less desirable for this kind of action. And what I mean by that, Commander McBain talked about we can't really put up a barrier that like they can't like lock them in or in real time do something to like block them. But we were talking about potentially doing things like speed bumps, like those pillars that come out of the ground that can help make it impossible to do donuts, things like that. So I just wanted to mention that this is something that's on our radar as well, and we've been really supportive. And also, he's being modest in what he's saying. Montgomery County is actually being looked at as a place that this has worked well, and they've probably stopped way more than any other jurisdiction. And anytime this happens, it's jarring and it's upsetting, but they've really limited the amount of times that this has happened in our community. So I just wanted to say that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cecily. Before we go to Paula, I want to take David's question and ask the 3D representatives. What do we know about the shooting incident, 10 days ago, 2 weeks, that was on Hartford Avenue in downtown Silver Spring? I know that you were able to address a meeting of the East Silver Spring community a couple of weeks ago. I wonder if there's any updates that you can share with us.
So like I said that night, and it still remains, a lot of good police work's been done. I'm very, I don't want to, I'm looking for a word. Things are going, I think, well. You have to understand that we're dealing with, it is a lot more involved in besides just that shooting. And I am very, very, very confident that we will have individuals in custody, and I will hopefully in the next couple of weeks be able to report on that. But I'll tell you that the night that happened, not only did the 3rd district put its special assignment team out there, but the 2nd district and the 1st district special assignment teams came down, and they worked tirelessly for the next several days, along with investigators. And that case will be closed, I can promise you. That individual is still alive, so it is obviously not a homicide investigation, but an aggravated assault and potential robbery investigation. So more to come on that.
Yeah, just understand this is a multi-jurisdictional endeavor with a lot of detectives, but we are very happy with the way the investigation is going, and I think the community will be too. We gotta let it play out and let the detectives do their job, and then we'll follow up.
Thank you, Captain Reed. Paula Edwards, you have a question.
Yes, I'm the ANC commissioner for 4A01 in DC, and my jurisdiction is right on the border. So I want to thank Captain Reed so much for the joint detail that he arranged with MPD. It was very successful, and it brought attention to a dangerous stretch of 16th Street on both sides of our border in Montgomery County and in DC. I would love to work more with you. I hope we can do, I think Captain Reed's going to try to get a joint detail for Georgia Avenue, which is also dangerous. And if we can get a license plate reader on our side, if that would help, that would be great. I'll try to find money for that. So I just wanted to thank you so much for working with us. And I think when you're safer, we're safer, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think the officers had 90 traffic stops in 4 hours between the two organizations. And like I said, Paula, in the email, I think the best thing about that was obviously DC is spread just as thin. I think there are 500 officers down right now. But with their traffic team, a lot of them even told me they had no idea how busy that area was up to the roundabout. So they're going to put it on their radar. And as our central traffic unit rotates back into our district, now they know that area is extremely busy, and they're going to try to focus on when they can. And then this used to be an endeavor they did all the time pre-COVID. So we're going to try to, our traffic division is going to try to reignite that flame and do more joint details along George Avenue. But yes, we're getting more grant funding. We're looking at more license plate readers to come into the district, to come into the county and going out of the county. And that's one of my priority areas. So we will continue to work on that.
The next question from Iris Peabody. Iris? Did you want to ask a question? Well, if you decide that you want to ask a question, please let us know. Gentlemen, I want to ask you a question about the drug problem. We heard about drugs at the White Oak Shopping Center. I was wondering, how do you characterize the drug problem? With pot being legal, is it a pot problem, or is it a fentanyl problem, a heroin problem, a meth problem? What are you seeing out there?
All the above. But in all seriousness, what's very interesting, and you'll hear the state's attorney, John McCarthy, say this, even with the legalization of cannabis, the cannabis, there are a lot of homicides that we've had in Montgomery County that are deal with cannabis. It's probably our most violent drug, believe it or not. I think everybody thinks that heroin and cocaine are the violent drugs, but they're not. It's cannabis. I'll tell you, I was a little worried about how many calls for service we were going to get when they legalized cannabis last year. We really, I think people do recognize that we have a new odor in downtown Silver Spring and other places of the county, which is in my book not so great. But we really haven't had a lot of complaints about smoking in public. And I will also say that the state's attorney just doubled down and basically said that if there are cases where people are distributing or possessing with the intent to distribute large amounts of marijuana, they will prosecute. So we'll see where that goes, throughout the near future here. But as far as drugs that are really affecting our neighborhood, our county, fentanyl is probably number one. One of the main reasons for fentanyl being such a problem is as it relates to overdoses. We're seizing a lot of counterfeit pills that they're pressed as being Percocet, and individuals are buying them thinking they're buying Percocet. In essence, they're buying fentanyl, which is much cheaper. But the problem with that is that the fentanyl is about 20,000 times more powerful than what the person thinks that they're taking. So when they ingest, whether it's through IV or taking the pill or snorting it, when they're taking it, they're dying, and that's the problem. We're still using Narcan at high rates, but fentanyl is probably our biggest problem right now, just because of the deaths that are associated with it. In several years ago, you saw it was a 29 to 39-year-old drug. Well, and that's where we saw a lot of our overdose deaths and overdoses in general. This past year, we saw an alarming rate of teenagers that are either dying or overdosing on fentanyl, and I think those numbers are have kind of leveled out a little bit, but they still remain a concern. We're seeing them in the schools, some overdoses in the schools, and it still continues to be a problem.
Alan, I was able to turn my mic on.
Iris?
Yes, and thank you, Commander McBain. We walk a lot in the area, my husband and I, and probably within like the last 8 to 9 months, we really are noticing what looks like open air drug dealing in downtown Silver Spring, particularly the Whole Foods parking lot and outside Don Polio on Ellsworth. I'm talking about in the afternoon and early evening. And it'll be like 3 or 4 guys. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right, what's going on, and or kids with their backpacks on scooters. And I have to admit, it makes us feel very unsafe. It's like I just cross the street, put my head down, and I never really know what to do. Am I going to call the police? It's not like I actually see it, but I mean, I know that's, and I'm really ill at ease with it because it's really blatant, and that there might be guns nearby too. So I'm just curious if anyone else in the neighborhood has noticed this, and also what your recommendations are, just as a citizen walking by. I saw it today. up at Whole Foods.
Commander, I can actually take this. So we've been working with the security team at the mall at Ellsworth and stuff, and our DCAT, our SAT, our plainclothes units have made quite a few arrests along Ellsworth for doing just that. We know who the main dealers are, the main players. We're keeping an eye on them. Sometimes when we hit them in their areas, they move. So I will make sure that our teams and our CBD bike teams, our DCAT teams, our SAT teams, our patrol officers, I mean, they're out there humping every single day, and they're making some great arrests. So I will pass that information on. We know where they like to hang out. And we continue to monitor their areas, and we continue to make Silver Spring an unsafe and unwelcome area to do that kind of stuff. As far as the marijuana and stuff goes, if officers do see that, just smoking a joint or something like that, like Commander McBain said, there's very little we can do because of the legislation, but our officers do walk up to them and say, hey, this is not the place for that. Be respectful of everybody. 9 times out of 10, they'll listen. Sometimes we get some mouth back from the young people. But
they're not smoking, they're dealing, like
No,
they're clusters of guys. But
I
we
know, but
appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah.
It makes us nervous. We don't know what to do. Should I call the police or just keep walking?
Well, obviously, if you see something that you don't think is right, we always encourage people. You can dial the non-emergency number, which is 301-279-8000. We don't want people to flood 911 when it's something that that it's not an actual crime in progress. But we take this information serious, and I'll pass it on to our officers to monitor those areas.
Well, thank you very much.
And I'll just say also, you have no obligation to provide your information, and we don't need to meet with you. So you can simply say, this is what I see, this is what they're wearing, this is where they are, and I'm hanging up now.
Thank you so much, all of you.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
We're coming close to the end of our scheduled time. We've got a question from Ms. Presley.
Thank you. It's Jennifer Presley.
Hi, Jennifer.
I wonder if it's on your radar. It seems less important than many of the issues we've talked about, but several of us ask about the excessive and noise and disruptive behavior of 2 or 3 groups at the farmers market on Saturday mornings who are proselytizing religiously excessively so that we can't talk to the folks at the farmers market. It's very disruptive and really is driving folks away from the farmers market. Is that against the law? Is there something we should be working to get changed to make that not happen?
Yeah, so that has been an ongoing problem that I've dealt with for the last 3 years that I've been here, and usually it kind of comes and goes. And I'll tell you that a lot of times, the police aren't really the number one kind of person to go to deal with that. And a lot of times what we do is we try to work with permitting, licensing, and also our EPA because of the amplification. And so really, I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. I haven't heard about that for a long time now. And sometimes when I don't hear, the squeaky wheel kind of gets my attention. So I appreciate that. But a lot of times what I do is I work with Eric Rausch at the at Veterans Plaza. I work with Jacob Newman and Earl Stoddard with the County Executive's Office. And we usually have the EPA head out there and have a conversation with them.
It's gotten really bad in the last.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Cecily?
Can I jump in on that one? Yeah. We have actually a work group that I don't think Commander McBain knows about yet, with Earl Stoddard and our county attorneys and a couple other folks. We're really trying to figure out ways to manage this. It is a really big problem, and we recognize it, and we've been working hard to try to figure out a way. There's First Amendment rights that make it very complicated and unfair. But if people are in the public right away, our county attorneys have told us there's challenges with managing that. But that is something that's definitely on Councilmember Stewart's radar, and it's something that we're working towards a resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecily. As we come to the end of our program, Commander McBain, some final remarks for the community.
Yep. Alan, once again, thank you very much. This was a great meeting tonight. I've been reading the comments in the chat. Thank you very much to all of you who there's some very kind words in there and some great questions. If your question wasn't answered, or if you have a question that's more personal for you, many of you know I have an email address of 3dcommander@montgomerycountymd.gov. That's 3dcommander@montgomerycountymd.gov. You can send your email. I do not look at it every single day, but I monitor it and I look at it usually every couple days, and I'll get back to you and try to answer your questions, or you can give me your information, and if you want a phone call, I can do that as well. I'm always up for a community group if you want to meet live. But no, I just appreciate everybody's just their participation in wanting to make this place a lot better and more enjoyable to hang out in Silver Spring. So thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Commander McBain and your staff, and to everybody who joined us this evening. This is the February meeting of Safe Silver Spring. We do this 4 times a year. The next one will be in May. You can keep up with us on our Safe Silver Spring Facebook page, and we have a website that we're working on. So thank you all for joining us this evening. Please take advantage of the commander's invitation. If you have issues, please let him know about that. Thank you so much, everybody, and good night.
Yeah, thank you, Al. Thank you.
Thank you.